Tell you the truth about something first, and I need you to sit with it for a second. There is a specific kind of pain that doesn't come from strangers. It doesn't come from a bad boss or a rough breakup or a year that just didn't go your way. It comes from the people who were supposed to know you better than anyone and chose not to. I'm telling you this because I lived inside that pain for a long time, and I know I'm not the only one. If you've ever been made to feel small by your own family, not once, not accidentally, but consistently over years, then this is for you. My name doesn't matter for this story. What matters is what happened at my brother's engagement party, and what happened before it, and what I finally understood after. Let me give you the background first, because without it, none of this makes sense. I'm 31. I grew up in a mid-sized city in Ohio, second of 3 kids. My older brother, I'll just call him my brother, is 4 years older than me. My younger sister is 3 years younger. My parents are both still alive, still married, still living in the same house I grew up in. On paper, a normal family. What you didn't see on paper was the dynamic. My brother was always the one, the firstborn son, the one who got a car at 16, the one my dad came to every game for, the one my mom called first when something happened, good or bad. He wasn't a bad person. I want to be fair about that. But he'd been given a throne he didn't ask for, and over time, he started acting like he deserved it. My sister was the youngest and the only girl, so she got her own version of special treatment. Tender, protective, the baby. And then there was me, the middle, the one who didn't have a category. I don't say this to be dramatic. I say it because it's accurate. I was the kid who got decent grades and nobody threw a party. The one who worked a part-time job at 16, and my mom said, "That's good for you, builds character," while she was still handing my brother cash on the weekends. The one who didn't get a speech at Thanksgiving, not because anything terrible happened, but because I just sort of wasn't on the radar. By the time I was in my mid-20s, I had accepted it. You tell yourself it's fine. You tell yourself families are complicated. You find your own life and you build it quietly, and you stop waiting for them to notice. That's exactly what I did. At 24, I started doing event coordination. Small stuff at first, venue sourcing, logistics for corporate clients. I was good at it. I had an eye for spaces, for what made a room feel right. Within 2 years, I was partnering with a friend of mine, a guy named Hugo, on something bigger. We weren't just coordinating events. We were acquiring venues, small ones at first. A rooftop space in Columbus, a converted warehouse outside Cincinnati. Hugo had the capital connections. I had the operational instincts. We formed an LLC, Meridian Hospitality Group, and we kept our names off the public-facing stuff deliberately, not to hide anything, just because neither of us wanted the headache of people treating us differently at events we were managing. It was a practical decision. My family knew I did event stuff. That was the extent of it. I never corrected them, partly because they never asked follow-up questions, and partly because I'd learned a long time ago that unless you showed up with something they already recognized as impressive, they weren't going to be impressed. A quiet LLC wasn't something they'd understand, so I let them have their version of me, the middle kid who plans parties for a living. By the time I was 30, Meridian had 6 properties. One of them was Walton Hall, a restored historic event space in a suburb of Columbus, high ceilings, wrought iron details, the kind of place that books 18 months out. It was our flagship. Hugo and I were proud of it. I never told my family we owned it. So when my brother announced his engagement and his fiancée, a woman named Margot, perfectly nice, very organized, started venue shopping, I didn't say a word when my mom called me excitedly to say they'd found the most beautiful place. "It's called Walton Hall," she said. "Have you heard of it?" "Yeah," I said. "It's a good space." "It's a little expensive," she said. "But your brother deserves it." Of course he does, I thought. I didn't say it out loud. The party was scheduled for a Saturday in March, an engagement celebration, about 80 guests, dinner and dancing, the works. Margot's family was flying in from out of state. It was a big deal. I got an invitation. That surprised me a little, honestly. Not because I expected to be excluded, but because the invitation came late, 6 days before the event. My mom called me the day after I got it to make sure I was coming, and the way she said it told me everything. "We figured you'd want to be there, even if it's last minute." Even if it's last minute. I almost didn't go. I sat with that feeling for a day or two, but I decided I would, because my brother and I didn't have a bad relationship exactly. We had a distant one. And I thought maybe this is a chance. Maybe people grow up. Maybe things shift. I wore a dark suit. Nothing flashy. I drove myself. I got there about 20 minutes before the party started. The parking lot was already filling up. I walked toward the entrance, and I could see my family clustered near the front doors. My mom, my dad, my brother and Margot, my sister, a few relatives. They were greeting arriving guests. I raised my hand in a wave as I got close. My mom saw me first. Her face did something complicated. Not unwelcoming, but not warm either. Like she was doing quick math about where I fit in the scene. My brother gave me a half hug, the kind where one arm stays at your side. You made it, he said. Like I'd traveled from another country. Yeah, I said. Congratulations, man. Margot, you look great. Margot smiled genuinely. She's good people. Thank you for coming. Then my sister appeared next to my mom, and I heard my mom say to her, quietly, not quietly enough. He probably drove that old Civic. Hope he doesn't feel weird about the parking. I have a 3-year-old Accord. Not that it mattered. I let it go. We went inside. The space looked immaculate. I knew it would. I'd been getting the manager's reports for 2 years. The floral arrangements were exactly what the coordinator had spec'd. The lighting was perfect. I felt a strange double-layer feeling, standing there, pride in the space, and a quiet ache that I couldn't say anything about it. I found a seat at a table toward the middle of the room. I recognized a couple of my cousins. We made small talk. I got a drink. My dad found me about 20 minutes in. He sat down, looked around the room, and said, "Beautiful place, huh?" "Yeah," I said. "It really is. Your brother did well choosing this." He paused. "Margot helped, I think. She's got good taste." "She does," I said. He nodded. Then, like he was being generous, "You do event stuff, right? You must see places like this sometimes." "Sometimes," I said. "It's a tough field," he said. "Lot of competition." "You doing okay?" "Financially, I mean." "You need anything?" I was 30 years old. I had a net worth I won't disclose here, but that would have genuinely shocked him. I had a team of 14 people. I had an asset that had appreciated significantly in the 3 years we'd owned it. "I'm fine, Dad," I said. "Thank you." He patted my shoulder. Good, let me know." He got up and went back to my brother's table. The main table. The one with the good seats. I watched him go and felt something I'd felt 100 times before. That specific loneliness of being present and invisible at the same time. About an hour in, I went to find the restroom. The hallway off the main hall led past the back-of-house corridor. And as I came around the corner, I nearly walked into Leon. Leon is our venue manager at Fulton. He's been with us since we opened the space. He's thorough, calm, exactly who you want running a 200-person event. He saw me, and his face broke into a big smile. "Hey, I didn't know you were coming tonight," he said, and he reached out and shook my hand the way he always does. Warm, firm, genuine. I would have flagged you when a reservation came in, but the client name didn't connect until we were already deep in setup. "That's all right," I said, quietly. I should have said something. "Everything good? You need anything? I can get you moved to a better table, set you up with Leon." I kept my voice low. "I'm just here as a guest. The client is my brother. My family doesn't know about the ownership structure. I'd appreciate if we keep it low-key tonight." Leon nodded. "Professional as always." "Of course. Whatever you need. But I do want to say the Nakamura Floral team did something incredible with the West Wall. And the new sound system is running perfectly. If you get a chance to check I saw it," I said. "It's great. You did a great job." He smiled again. "Anything you need, just signal me." I thanked him and started walking back. I was almost to the main hall when I heard my mother's voice. She was standing just inside the hall entrance with my aunt, my dad's sister, and she hadn't seen me come around the corner yet. "Honestly, I don't know what he does exactly," she was saying. "Something with events. He's never really had a direction, you know. Not like his brother. Remember how worried we were about him in his 20s? My aunt said something I didn't catch. He turned out fine, my mom said. He's always been the one who needed more time. You know how some kids are." She said it gently. She wasn't being cruel. That was almost the worst part. She genuinely believed it. After 30 years, after everything I'd built quietly and alone, she genuinely believed I was the one who'd needed more time, who'd never quite found his footing. I stood in that corridor for a moment, then I walked back into the room. I sat down. Got another drink. A cousin I hadn't seen in years came over and we talked for a while about his kids, his new house. Normal stuff. I was present for it. I laughed at the right moments. But part of me was still standing in that corridor. And then the moment happened that I didn't plan for and couldn't have scripted. Leon came into the main hall to do a routine check. He does this a few times per event. Just make sure everything is running right. He was crossing the room and he caught my eye and gave me a small nod. The professional kind. Normal. But my brother saw it. He was watching the room, groom energy, taking everything in, and he saw Leon nod at me specifically, and he leaned over to Margot and said something, and then he got up and walked toward Leon. I watched this happen in real time. My brother stopped Leon near the edge of the room. They were maybe 15 feet from my table. I could see them talking. Leon was nodding. Then my brother's expression shifted. He said something else. Leon responded. My brother looked across the room at me. He walked back to his table, said something to my dad. My dad looked at me, then my mom looked at me. I kept my face neutral. I took a sip of my drink. About 4 minutes later, my brother came over to my table. He sat down across from me. He had the look of someone trying to work out a math problem in real time. Hey, he said. Hey, I said. So, he paused. I was just talking to the venue manager. Leon, I said. Yeah, Leon. He said it like the name tasted strange. He said you're the owner of this place. I didn't say anything for a moment. Then, one of two, yeah. Hugo and I run the parent company. My brother stared at me. You own Walton Hall. We own the LLC that holds the property, yeah. Silence. Since when? About 3 years. He sat back. I watched him process it. He wasn't angry exactly, more like recalibrating. But the picture he'd had of me in his head had just been overlaid with a different image that didn't match. And he was trying to figure out what to do with the gap. Why didn't you say anything? He finally asked. I thought about that for a second. I thought about the late invitation. I thought about he probably drove that old Civic. I thought about he's always been the one who needed more time. I thought about 30 years of being the middle kid who didn't have a category. I didn't think it would change anything, I said. That landed somewhere. I saw it on his face. He didn't have an answer for that. He sat there for another moment, and then my mom appeared at his shoulder. She'd clearly been watching from across the room and couldn't wait any longer. What's going on? She said. She looked between us. My brother said quietly, He owns this place, Mom. She looked at me. What? The venue, I said. My business partner and I own it. We've owned it for about 3 years. The expression on my mom's face was something I'll never forget. Not guilt, exactly. Not embarrassment, exactly. Not embarrassment, exactly. Something more complicated than either of those. A sudden resorting of a file she thought she had organized. The version of me she'd carried in her head for 30 years was colliding with information that didn't fit into it, and she didn't know where to put any of it. Why didn't you tell us? She said. Her voice was almost hurt, like I'd kept a secret from her. And I had, technically. But I sat with the question for a beat, and then I said honestly, because nobody asked. That's a sentence I've thought about a lot since that night. Because nobody asked. That's a sentence I've thought about a lot since that night. Because nobody asked. It sounds like a small thing. It wasn't. In 30 years, my family had never asked me a follow-up question. Not what do you actually do? Not what does your company do? Not are you doing okay in the way that actually wants an answer? They had a story about me and they'd been living inside it, and the story worked fine for them, so why would they go looking for information that might complicate it? Nobody asked. My dad came over. I told the whole thing again. I watched his face do the same recalculation. He kept looking around the room, at the high ceilings, the perfect lighting, the floral arrangements, like he was counting what it all meant in dollar figures. This is a significant property, he said finally. Yeah, I said. You should have said something, he said. We could have, I mean, family discount, right? He half laughed. I looked at him. I didn't say anything. He stopped laughing. I want to be honest about what I felt in those moments, because I think it matters. I didn't feel victorious. That's the thing people expect, I think. The triumphant reveal, the look on their faces, the moment you've been waiting for. But the truth is it didn't feel like that at all. It felt hollow in a way I wasn't prepared for. Because the reveal didn't change what had already happened. My brother and Margot had found this venue on their own, and their party was beautiful, and they deserved that. But I had sat at a mid-room table alone while my family wondered whether I could afford the parking. The reveal didn't undo any of that. It just added a layer of awkward to an evening that had already cost me something. What I felt, mostly, was tired. Tired of the version of me they'd been carrying around. Tired of the way success, when it's quiet and doesn't announce itself in forms they recognize, just gets filed under doing okay, I guess. Tired of being the one who had to be revealed rather than known. The rest of the evening was strange. My family kept glancing at me. My aunt came over and made a point of being warm in a way she hadn't been when I arrived. A cousin I hadn't spoken to in 3 years suddenly had a lot of questions about the venue, the business, how it all worked. My dad made another remark about family discounts that I let pass. My brother came back at one point and said, "We should talk sometime." And I said, "Sure," and I meant it, and I also knew it would probably take months to materialize. My mom didn't come back over. She stayed at the head table, and I watched her talk to other guests, and I thought about the conversation in the corridor. He's always been the one who needed more time, and I made a decision. When the party started winding down, I found her. She was by the bar getting a glass of water. I waited until we were somewhat alone. "Mom," I said. She turned. There was something different in her eyes now. A wariness that hadn't been there before, like she was bracing. "I heard what you said earlier," I said. "In the corridor, before Leon and I talked." She went still. "I'm not saying it to make you feel bad," I said. "I'm saying it because I think we need to be honest with each other, and we haven't been for a really long time. Not because of secrets about the business, about the other stuff, about how things have been in this family." She opened her mouth and then closed it. "I don't want an apology tonight," I said. "I'm not asking for one. But I want you to know that I heard it. And I think at some point, when you're ready, we should actually talk. Not about the venue, not about any of this, about the other things." She nodded. Her eyes were glassy. "Okay," she said quietly. "Okay," I said. I touched her arm briefly. Then I went and got my jacket. I drove home alone. It was almost midnight. The highway was mostly empty and I had the radio off. I have thought about that drive a lot in the time since. What I came back to over and over was something I'd understood intellectually for years, but that night I felt it in my body. Success doesn't fix the wound. You can build something real and significant and entirely your own, and it won't retroactively change the years you spent being invisible to the people who should have seen you. The reveal doesn't do the healing. You have to do that work somewhere else, separate from the outcomes. What the reveal did do was close something. Something I'd been leaving a little bit open without realizing it. Some back door that said maybe one day they'll see it. Maybe one day the story they have of me will match who I actually am. That door closed, and the closing was painful, but it was also, finally, a relief. My mom called 2 weeks later. We talked for almost an hour. It was the first real conversation we'd had in years. Not updates, not logistics, not performance of family normalcy, but actual conversation. She said things I hadn't expected her to be able to say. I said things I'd been sitting on for longer than I want to admit. It wasn't a resolution. It was a beginning, which is harder and more valuable. My brother and I did have that talk, eventually. About 6 weeks later, over coffee. He's not a bad person. He just spent his whole life occupying a center of gravity he'd been placed in without asking for it, and he'd never really examined what that meant for the rest of us. We talked about it. I don't know how much of it stuck, but I said what I needed to say, and that matters independent of what he does with it. My dad and I are still working through it. He's a man who leads with practicality, and the conversation I needed to have with him is one he doesn't quite have the vocabulary for yet. We're trying. As for the venue, my brother and Margot came in about a month later for a tour. The real one, with Leon, seeing everything. Margot cried a little at how beautiful the west wall looked in the morning light. My brother shook my hand at the end of it. A real handshake, both hands, the kind he'd never given me before, and said, "I had no idea." "I know," I said. "I'm sorry," he said. "Not just about this." I nodded. "Me too. I've thought about what I would tell someone who's in the place I was. Still building, still invisible, still waiting to be known by the people who should know you best. Here's what I'd say. Stop waiting for the reveal to do the work. The reveal might come, or it might not. Your family might see you, or they might not. But the version of you that you're building, the one that stays up late and figures out the hard problems and doesn't need a headline to know it's real, that version doesn't need their recognition to be valid. And here's the other thing. Forgiveness isn't the same as accountability. I forgave my family. I'm in the process of it anyway. It's not a single moment, it's an ongoing practice. But forgiveness didn't happen because they finally saw the building I owned. It happened because I decided I deserved to put it down. That's a completely separate transaction from whether they've examined themselves honestly. I'm not waiting for those two things to happen simultaneously. They might never. What I know is this: the silence I'd lived in. The quiet building years, the keeping my head down, the not needing anyone to hand me a crown. That silence was never a weakness. It just looked like one to people who'd been loud their whole lives. I'm still running Meridian. We have 8 properties now. Hugo and I are looking at a 9th, a converted mill space outside of Pittsburgh that has good bones and terrible lighting and is exactly the kind of problem we like to solve. My mom knows what I do now. She asks real questions about it sometimes. It's not perfect, but it's more honest than it was. And honesty, I've found, is actually the beginning of everything worth having. That's the story. That's what happened. I'm not telling you because I need you to be impressed. I'm telling you because if you've been invisible inside your own family, I want you to know. What they couldn't see was never the full picture. It was only ever their version of it. You know the real one. I've thought a lot about what actually caused that night to unfold the way it did. Not the logistics of it. Not the Vlitsy. Not the fact that Leon happened to cross the room at the right moment. The deeper cause. The thing underneath all of it. Here's what I keep coming back to. The way people treat you is almost always a direct reflection of the story they've constructed about you. My family had a story. It was built over 30 years out of small moments. The times I didn't make noise about what I was doing. The times I let things go rather than fight for recognition. The times I chose to build instead of announce. They took that silence and filled it with their own assumptions. He's the one who needed more time. He does event stuff. He probably drove that old Civic. None of it was malicious. That's the part that took me the longest to accept. It would have been easier if it was. But it was just ordinary human blindness. The kind that happens when people get comfortable with a version of someone and stop looking for updates. What changed that night wasn't my family. What changed was that reality finally walked into the same room as the story, and the story couldn't hold up. That's how it works, I think. Not dramatically, not all at once, but eventually. The things you actually built start to speak for themselves. You don't have to argue for them. You don't have to defend them. You just have to stay in the room long enough for the truth to become visible. I think about the years I spent being invisible to the people who should have known me best, and I don't regret them the way I used to. Because those were the years I was learning something that people who have always been seen don't always get the chance to learn: how to build something real without external validation as the fuel. That's not a small thing. That's actually the only kind of building that lasts. My mom and I talked eventually. My brother and I talked. Those conversations were hard and imperfect, and they mattered. But here's what I want to be clear about. Those conversations happened because I initiated them. Because I decided that honesty was worth the discomfort. Not because the reveal at Valton forced anyone's hand. The reveal just removed an excuse. The actual work of repair is always voluntary. There's something I want to say directly to anyone who's been where I was. If he's been doing the quiet work, building something, figuring something out, staying disciplined when nobody is watching and nobody is clapping, that work is not wasted just because the people closest to you can't see it yet. The integrity of what you build doesn't depend on their awareness of it. It depends on you. On whether you're doing it right. on whether you can look at it alone in a quiet room and know it's real. That's the standard that actually matters. And if the people who were supposed to see you finally do, let that be a bonus, not the point. The moment you make their recognition the goal, you hand them a power over you that they haven't earned and don't know how to hold. I'm still building. Hugo and I have 8 properties now. My mom asked real questions about it. My brother shook my hand like he meant it. Things are more honest than they were. That's enough. That's actually more than enough.